Well, Derek and Adam and everybody else, let's go ahead and get started. First off, let me get to some housekeeping issues. I'm Brent Christensen with the Chamber of Commerce. Let me first apologize. It seems that as we're all working from home, we have new challenges. My neighbor has decided that this is a perfect time for yard work. So if you hear some of that going on in the background, I apologize. But these are very interesting times. We are living in very interesting times, and that's for sure at the Christensen household this afternoon. Thanks everybody for joining us. We're going to get into the meat of the discussion here as well. The other housekeeping issue I would have is that when you want to ask a question, we would love for you to do that in our group chat. If you look down at the bottom of your screen, you should have a chat window. If you don't, hit the Alt button on your computer and it should pop up for you, but that's the best way for us to get to all of your questions today as we go forward on this. You can follow the Chamber on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GSO Chamber for all the latest information. We send out daily emails to our members with a recording of this call, any relevant links to information that is relevant, all of those sort of things. If you're not getting those and you're a member, please let us know, but we're doing that on a daily basis. Obviously, we're having these calls on a daily basis, and so those emails go out afterwards. If you're not a member and you're on this call, welcome. We're glad that you're here. All the links to resources and the recordings can be found on our website. That's greensboro.org/COVID-19. Again, greensboro.org/COVID-19. Yesterday was April Fool's Day. It was also Census Day. Those two are not. It was purely a coincidence. Let's say it that way. That April Fool's Day and Census Day were on the same day. We really need you all to fill out your census forms. You can do that online. You should have gotten something in the mail. I got an initial mailing, and today I got a postcard reminding me that I had to do that. That it was a requirement. It was a legal requirement to do that. Well, it's also really important to our community that we do that. It means more funding for our community. It means adequate representation, appropriate representation in Washington, D.C. A lot of things depend on those census counts. So please do go ahead and take the time to fill out that census form if you would. Today we're going to talk about the financial opportunities that are available for small businesses with the federal government's COVID response. And so we have two gentlemen with us today to talk about that. They are going to be on the front lines because a lot of this funding requires the banks to be a part of that. And so we have two wonderful members of our banking community here in Greensboro who have agreed to join us today. The first is Derek Ellington. Derek not only serves as the Mid-South Region Executive for Business Banking, he's also the Bank of America Market President in the Triad for North Carolina. He's actively involved in the community, and he is our board chair. So he is currently the chairman of the board of the Greensboro Chamber of Commerce and the Guilford County Economic Development Alliance. Adam Curry is joining us as well. He is the market president for First Bank. He's got great banking experience, including a number of years of investment banking experience, and he is also a member of the board of directors of the Greensboro Chamber of Commerce. So thank you all both for joining us today. Before I get directly into it, I will add this disclaimer, as I know you all will as well. We're still learning about this COVID response and everything that's available to small businesses out there. We're still learning about the requirements. We're still learning about what banks are going to be required to do and that sort of thing. And so, again, we've talked about this on a number of calls. We kind of feel like we're building the airplane while we're flying it. And so we will put that disclaimer out there that you all are experts up to today's moment, up to the moment of this call. I know, Adam, you and I talked earlier this week, and you said you've never studied a piece of legislation more than you've studied this piece of legislation, and that was just the legislation. Now you've got to get into the rules and regulations, right? So makes it even harder at that point. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you, Brent.
Let me get started with this first question, and let's stay up at the 30,000 foot view, because I know each of you all have bank-specific programs as well. So I'd like each one of y'all to just kind of start off, and I'll start with Derek tell us about what you're seeing out there from the Bank of America perspective, and what small businesses that do business with Bank of America and other banks ought to be staying attuned to at this point in these weird times.
Thank you, Brent. And again, thank you everybody who's been able to join today's discussion. These are first unprecedented times, and we're all going to be navigating one, challenges, but also looking at all the options that are available to us to help us succeed in this really crazy environment that we're all walking through. At Bank of America, we do have the distinction of being a very, very large institution. And as a result of that, we have a lot of clients that are in the space that we're talking about, 500 or less employees, both for-profit companies and not-for-profits. And we've got just an enormous amount of clients nationwide that would fit that profile. So much like what you all are experiencing individually, we're hearing collectively where tough decisions are having to be made by those clients to not only survive the challenges of the current day, but thrive in some cases where their businesses are actually seeing a rise in volume because of some of the things that they offer that are in high demand in the current environment. And we've got a lot of those examples that aren't really being talked about, where we're actually helping those clients prepare for the growth in their business, which was, again, unanticipated. But on the challenge side, we've had a lot of companies start to look at the trend lines around their business now that they've got a few weeks under their belt. And again, just level setting, we're only a few weeks into this now, so there's still much more unknown than there is that is known today. So clients are having to, make their best estimates of what they're going to need in the next 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days. Which is much different than in most cases they would have historically really looked at what they need for the next 12 months or 24-month period. So with that, we're so fortunate to have the government respond very, very quickly and put some resources in place that can really help small businesses access capital, access support, that can hopefully achieve the number one goal, and that is keeping their employees on the payroll, and then also sustaining the company until we get to the other side when things start to normalize in the environment. So a lot of companies have been coming to us, and what I would encourage all the small businesses on the line to do today is, if you haven't already, start having conversations with your bankers, more holistic conversations, not just about the SBA programs that are available, but holistically about, how you're, one, potentially renegotiating terms with your suppliers, how you may be looking at relationships with your landlords if you're a tenant, and, talking through support there from your landlord, other business partners where you may be able to renegotiate terms that can certainly help support your cash flow and ultimately keep you in business and keep folks on your payroll. So we're having a lot of those conversations today, Brent, where our bankers are either already have completed those kinds of discussions with their clients and talk through, one, the severity of how COVID-19 has impacted their business, what they are doing to have discussions with suppliers and key business partners that are within their control that could be beneficial to their cash flow. And then thirdly, looking at resources like those available through the SBA program that could be helpful to them in whatever their individual situation is. And then lastly, taking advantage of deferral programs. I mean, all banks today have stood up in short order deferral programs to help provide payment deferral assistance to clients who really need that support in the short term. And there's no cost to that. It is generally designed to not be punitive to the client. It is, again, taking payments that maybe due this month and deferring those out for, let's say, 60 days or 90 days in many cases, and moving those obligations to the end of the loan. So those are available today. And also, all of us are looking at the opportunity to waive fees and other things that are associated with those obligations that, again, will help our small businesses get through this short-term challenge. So those are a few of the things that we're hearing and we're seeing our clients do, and we're encouraging, again, the dialogue. The dialogue really helps both ways in arriving at the right solution.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Derek. Adam, do you have anything before we dive into the particulars of payment or payroll protection and that sort of thing? Do you have anything to add, just in kind of general from the banking perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think Derek obviously summed up the situation really well. I was sitting there thinking before this call about 1 month ago and what we were thinking about and doing. And I think about our community, and we were preparing for 3 of the biggest events Greensboro had seen in years, in the ACC tournament, the NCAA tournament, High Point Market, and what we were talking about and doing. And that was 1 month ago, right? Not even.
Right.
And then I fast forward to today, and this morning, in the last 2 weeks, we went from full employment in this country and the lowest unemployment rate that the country had seen to 10 million unemployment filings in 2 weeks, both just shattering previous records. I think it's one thing in what we saw in the Great Recession, where leverage and other things and excess led to a slowdown in our economy. I think what's unprecedented about this is that literally overnight, you have entire industries that have gone from full booming economy and full booming revenue to $0 in revenue overnight. And I think it's just, it's obviously unprecedented and something that none of us have experienced before.
Right, right. So let's go ahead and dig in a little bit into the federal COVID response. And again, Adam, you told me you'd been studying this piece of legislation more than perhaps you'd ever studied anything. What are we looking at in terms of this? Help us break down the things that are available, the programs that are available to small businesses out there, and then maybe you and Derek can talk a little bit about what roles banks are going to play in terms of accessing that.
Sure. So the hard thing here is going to be, you're going to get a lot. Derek and I talked before this, and you're going to get a lot of I don't knows from both of us. And it seems impossible that that's going to be the case 9 hours from when this program is supposed to kick off, but it is the case. So essentially, part of the overall CARES Act was a $350 billion, I'm going to say, pool of money to benefit small businesses in this country. Small businesses have been and continue to be the core of the U.S. economy. They employ a lot of our country and certainly are the core of who we are. So part of this was not only how do we take care of people that have lost their jobs, how do we take care of supplementing people's income, of all of those things for people, but you can't wake up at the end of this, whenever all of this ends, and say, oh no, we don't have any small businesses left in this country. So I think this piece of legislation, it has the right idea behind it, which is the primary part of it is called PPP, right? And the idea is the Paycheck Protection Plan, that if the government can get money to small businesses to allow them to continue to pay their employees, that even though the small business doesn't have any revenue, in most cases the small business isn't even allowed to open right now, that they can continue their operations, they can continue to pay their people, and ultimately thrive on the other side of this. So the legislation essentially uses banks to fund those loans and get that money out into the public, and then at some point in the future, the government would either guarantee those loans or forgive those loans for small businesses. That is a very high level of what I think the overall program is intended to do.
That's an awesome recap of that. And so we've got a number of small business owners on the line today that I'm sure, and I should also say one of the new happenings with this particular legislation is that there are also nonprofits, 501c3s and 501c19s that are eligible for this funding as well. So it's not just necessarily a for-profit business, but also some of the nonprofit organizations out there are eligible as well. Is that correct, Adam?
That is right. Yes,
Yeah.
And as well as sole proprietors, all as long as you have less than 500 employees. And there are even some exceptions to that based on industry and in the restaurant industry and hotel industry. But generally, if you have less than 500 employees, whether you're a nonprofit or for-profit business, you're considered generally eligible for this program.
Great. Derek, I know you have been busy because every time I've tried to call you, I've gotten a note on a text back that says, "Can I call you later? I'm on a call." So I know you all have been preparing as bankers for this day, which is going to come tomorrow, as Adam said, 9 hours or so away when these things start to open up. Talk to us a little bit about your understanding as it sits right now as to how small businesses are going to specifically be able to access this program, the PPP program.
Sure, Brent. And again, I would encourage the small businesses on the line who, one, if you're interested in finding out through the SBA if you're eligible or not, or if you just got a general curiosity, maybe you're not interested but you'd like to be prepared if you decide to do something even beyond the PPP program through the SBA, to go to sba.gov, their site, and click on the Disaster Loan Assistance link. And when you click on that link, you will see information about COVID-19 economic injury disaster loan application. And it will tell you on the site that their anticipated completion time for the application is 2 hours and 10 minutes. So understand there's a lot of information that they're requesting applicants to complete in this process. So you'll go again, sba.gov, click on the Disaster Loan Assistance link, go into the application, completing the application. And again, another important thing is that, you're going to be certifying to the federal government that everything that you're inputting is accurate and complete. And again, I've heard that there are going to be substantial penalties for, candidly, the fraudsters that try and access this program without real legitimate reasons for doing so. So again, you'll complete that process of the application, which asks a lot of information. And one of the things still a little bit up in the air that Adam and I were alluding to at the beginning of the call is, believe it or not, the day before this goes live, we are still ascertaining the final requirements from the federal government as to what they are going to require the banks to do, and again, any specifics that they may want to adjust in the application process. But there is a general understanding at this point that the banks are going to be a part of the validation process of the applicants. So us as banks having a really good handle on the folks who are submitting through our institutions for these loans is really going to be key, because we'll be validating that, one, we know that company well, and we know enough about them to generally underwrite the loan. So that's why I'd say first step is, after you complete the application, engage with your bank that you currently have a relationship with and take that application through your bank for submitting it into the process. It's going to be critical, again, because they have to underwrite you at this point based on the guidance we received from the government. So it's going to be really important that bank knows you well enough to be able to validate you in the process. And then you will get direction from that bank as to, by that time, what the final requirements that have been established by the federal government that will be involved. But some of that's going to be, some level of financial information that would support, one, your company being in existence and how many employees you have, which again is a key qualifier that they've spelled out on the application, that you've got to be under a certain amount of employees, which today they're stating 500. So there'll be some validation of that, as well as some additional financial information as well, and then information supporting some of the things that they said that the proceeds can be used for, which again, supporting rent payments, supporting group health payments, etc. All those things that have been spelled out on their site. So you would have some level of validation. Also, they alluded to a maximum salary limitation as well. So again, some validation that would support that, as you go through the calculation in the tool for what you would be applying for, some supporting information for that calculation that you would ultimately be requesting financing for. So again, that's where I would stay in gathering that information, thinking through, looking at the information that have provided on the site as you would, walk through the application, and then having a lot of communication with your current bank.
Great. Thank you, Derek. I actually got kicked off there for about 5 seconds, so I missed the end of that. But I think, Adam, if you could talk us through kind of what exactly, are the requirements. I know Derek said you're still trying to ascertain what all of those are going to be, but are you all going to be taking applications online? What kind of information needs to be provided? Share as much of those sort of details as you possibly can at this point.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Brent, too, I'm gonna be a little more cautious than I usually am, because last week we got all this information, I guess on Thursday, and then Tuesday night it all changed, and we're waiting for it to change again at some point between now and sometime tomorrow, when people can start taking applications. There are 4 documents on the Treasury's website, on the U.S. Treasury's website, that are all very helpful, and included in there is an application. Generally, companies are going to be eligible for 2.5 times 1 month of payroll. And as Derek alluded, as long as they, I think, use at least 75% of that and can prove that they kept employees on without reducing pay and without firing people or rehire people for 8 weeks, that at least that part of it at this point seems like it will be forgivable. And when I say seems like it, they just haven't rolled out the exact qualifications for how something is forgivable and what is forgivable. There are different levels of what that loan size generates. So I think there's more confidence at whatever 2.5 times 1 month of payroll is, under $350,000 of understanding and knowing the rules. It gets grayer from $350,000 to $2 million, and then from $2 million to $10 million. I would say we really don't know much yet. I would, just as Derek just did, strongly encourage folks to work with their existing bank. I think that most banks that I have talked to, and most folks that I've talked to, seem to want to try to prioritize their own clients here. Obviously, our entire industry is ready and trying to prepare. We as a bank have pulled people off of many other lines of business and tried to train them up to accept the amount of applications that we think that we're going to have. So I think we're preparing for all of that right now. The crux of what you want to know, Brent, is not determined yet, and that is tomorrow, how do you go to a bank and apply for this, and what do you need to bring? We are telling people that they should have, at a minimum, a 2019 profit and loss statement or 2019 tax returns, if completed, at least the most recent 4 quarters of payroll tax form 941, and then verification of the number of employees and payroll incurred over the most recent 12-month period. I think that when the final rules come out, we may need all of that information and more. We may need a little bit less than that information, but that's what I would start preparing to have at a minimum if you're a small business that wants to try to apply for one of these loans.
That's
Right.
exactly what
I
we're
agree
looking
with
for.
Adam.
Go ahead, Derek. Go ahead, Derek. I'm sorry.
I
Keep
agree with
going.
Adam on all of that. And again, as Adam said, that may vary from bank to bank. So that's why it's so important to talk directly with your bank about, what they're going to require in the process, and then start moving expeditiously to gathering that information, and understanding that this is a fluid process and things may change during the process. There's still a lot of details that have not yet been worked out with the federal government that one, provide security and support for the small businesses getting paid in a timely manner, as well as ensuring the support from the federal government to the banks for these loans that are being made through the banks. So again, just be prepared that things may change over the next few days in terms of what is required.
Got it. When I got kicked off of the Zoom there for just a second, I lost some of my group chat. But what I remember seeing is there was one question, and I think Adam, you just confirmed that this is an 8-week program. So 8 weeks of payroll are seemingly going to be forgiven at this point. That's correct?
I think so, but again, that has not been very well defined, and what's really hasn't been very well defined. I mean, they said on the front end that you're going to have 6 months of deferred payments, but the loan term was changed from 10 years to 2 years between Thursday and Tuesday,
Wow.
and we don't know as banks, are we going to be asked to hold that loan on our books for 8 weeks, and then it's forgiven, and then we get paid back by the SBA and the federal government, or whether it's going to be on our books for 2 years. Those are a lot of the questions that are still up in the air at this point. And I'm sorry we have so many I don't knows, but it's what we have right now. We'll say, I think all of the banks are in a very similar position, and I would be surprised if when these final rules don't come out that I think everybody will communicate with their customers, shortly thereafter to say, here's the game plan going forward, and here's what we need, and here's how these applications are going to work.
So 2 really good questions here. And Derek, I'll put the first one to you. Are there any stipulations on small business that have access to credit lines or retained earnings that borrow? Would they deny reimbursement of the PPP loan if you borrow that money for payroll?
Well, again, based on the general information they put out there, it says that, again, these proceeds from this loan are there to support payroll. So, but again, the instruction we've been given in all of our conversations is, the banks are really not here to approve whether or not you are eligible for the program. And that's why you go through their application process. And there will be a determination made through that application process whether or not you're eligible. But again, there's nothing that's been clarified in terms of whether or not there are going to be conflicts with certain types of borrowing. I mean, you got to think about, do you have additional debt and additional covenants that you got to make sure, again, with your bank, that any new indebtedness that you'd be taking on, that they would be, willing to allow that if you've got covenants in place on current obligations that prohibit additional debt. So again, that's why you've got to talk with your bank. You've got to also go through the government approval process to see if, again, you qualify based on the criteria that they've established, and unfortunately won't be final until at least tomorrow as to, what they're going to require.
And can you all see, this is just a general question. I can kind of see this train getting started down the tracks and maybe having to have a few stops along the way to clarify things even further.
Yes, absolutely.
Probably.
We expect that.
Yeah. Really good question here, Adam. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Keep going.
I was going to say, for what it's worth, I literally just got an email as I'm sitting here talking that says, quote, resolution appears to have been reached. Details are few. The only thing in here that's of interest to anybody is that guidance is promised late this afternoon or tonight. Okay.
Well, good. Well, we'll pay attention. Maybe you guys can help us, help guide us to some good websites to steer everybody to as we go along. We're constantly communicating on this topic, and so again, we can help push that out via social media very quickly. I would say a really good question here, Adam, and you may or may not have the answer to this question. Maybe something that is going to be clarified here is: does the small business owner qualify as an employee?
As I understand it, yes. However, the one limitation that's been floated right now is any salary over $100,000 a year will be capped at $100,000 a year. So you would essentially take 1/12 of $100,000 as your baseline calculation. As I understand it, yes, it's your entire payroll. I guess it depends on how they pay themselves, but any salary over $100,000 is capped at $100,000.
Gotcha. That's a good, appreciate that detail. Absolutely. Are there any other questions? I'm not seeing anything else come up on chat here. We're going to give you just one. Wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. Nope. I've got a good question here, and I think I heard this. it may be ready or not, here I come. But one of the questions is, when will banks be fully prepared to meet with business and process applications? Adam, I heard you talking about this was kind of an all hands on deck. You're training more people to be able to be ready for this. I'm sure that's the same, Derek, with BOA. Tell us, when the floodgates open tomorrow, is everybody ready to sit down and meet? Because quite frankly, we've been talking with our group for a couple of weeks now about, hey, get ready. This is coming. Meet with your bankers. On your mark, say go. Does go tomorrow mean go for both of you all?
You know, as it relates to Bank of America, Brent, we are prepared to start accepting applications tomorrow from clients that come to us and are interested in moving forward with the program. We will leverage a lot of our technology as much as possible to get those applications into a digital environment that, one, we think will make it a lot more efficient for those applying, and it just creates a lot better tracking and communication for us to interact with those applicants much more efficiently. But we have had a huge team of folks working on this for the past 2 or more weeks, and I mean, working all night. And as Adam said earlier, I mean, things have changed hourly, and dramatic changes in the last 2 days that have really caused us to have to be very, very nimble in changing some of the things that, again, we'll try to ensure a good client experience. But we will be prepared to start accepting applications tomorrow.
Adam, I'm assuming you're in the same boat there at this point?
I'm going to say yes, but I'm going to hedge my bet a little bit more depending on what comes out tonight and what time it comes out tonight. I think that absent a lot of changes, then yes, we are ready. But again, I hate to keep hedging my bet so much. I'm usually not like that. Given how much it's changed in a week, I'm going to say as long as it looks somewhat similar to tonight to what it does right now, then yes is our answer.
Good. Great question here. The 8-week period, when does that start? Does it start upon application? Does it start when it receives the money, or when the company receives the money, or is that still something to be determined that we don't know quite yet?
Well, the calculation for the amount of money that you're borrowing is based on an 8-week payroll period. So you'll be getting that in sum of what you'd be borrowing.
Right, but so I think the question is...
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Derek. Keep going. I'm sorry.
As Adam was explaining, he said, you basically would take and validate what 1 month of payroll cost is for the most recent payroll period, and then that will be applied out over that, the 8-week amount that they're using in what they're allowing you to get financing for. So again, it's just taking, whatever your 8-week payroll cost has been, and that's what you're getting in terms of a loan. And that's to hopefully keep your folks on the payroll.
Right. There's a good question here on the differentiator here between, are the banks processing applications, or are applications being processed online through the SBA website? What's the difference between qualification process and then processing of the loan? Is there a delineation there?
As I understand it, Brent, the application has to come through a bank. I believe you can go to the SBA's website to get the application, but the application and the additional materials of what each bank needs has to come through that bank for actual approval. And then these loans are funded with the bank's capital on the bank's balance sheet. So this is not, it's an SBA backed loan, but the loan is made by each individual bank.
Gotcha. So they come through you, the SBA makes the determination that they're eligible, and then you process the loan and it's on your books, essentially.
Correct.
Lots of questions about 1099 employees. Any thought on how 1099s approach this, whether 1099s can be included in a company's payroll? What's y'all's take on 1099s?
I'll answer first. I don't have that level of detail. I haven't seen any final disposition on that. But Adam, have you seen anything?
I have. I was going to say the original bill said no. The change on Tuesday night included 1099 employees.
Right. So
it included commissioned employees, 1099 employees. Basically, it really widened it to almost anyone.
Gotcha. So the answer is yes, but again, go through your bank to verify and get all that in your application. Got another
Correct.
question from a consulting firm that is an LLC, a single entity. How would they approach that? Are they able to take advantage of this as well again, or does that go to the I don't know how to ask that question other than that. Is there a single entity LLCs that, are they able to take advantage of this program, or do they need to seek another?
They should be able to. I will say there's one qualifier that is here also, that is common ownership. So if a single person or a single group of people commonly owns a group of businesses, say you have an operating business and a real estate holding company, for these purposes, those would be considered common ownership and they would all be folded together.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there's a lot of detail in, again, the latest draft around affiliates. And again, folks would just need to read through that very, very thoroughly.
And so, Derek, one more question, or to both of you all. If this is expected to start with self-service online terminal, when does that terminal open up for y'all's? Do y'all have online terminals that will open up at midnight, or what's the timing of all of this?
Yeah, I would say that, we were in the process of updating our Cash Pro Online and small business banking online portals to incorporate all the changes that to happen. And that's going to, the last update's going to occur sometime late tonight to try to capture as much of the changes that have been shared as possible. So I would encourage people, they could certainly, if they want to stay up to midnight or whatever and try to access those portals, that they're welcome to do that, but it's possible that they may not be available until, regular business hours tomorrow morning.
Gotcha. Good question here. Again, clarification. We have some restaurants out there or other businesses where employees would have relied on tips as part of their payroll or part of their salary or payment. How will that be handled under this program?
Trying to
be determined.
I saw something.
As I understand it, they can be included, but it'll be how much they claimed, I guess.
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
The tricky parts in the computation of those, right?
All the numbers have to add up.
Right.
Gotcha.
This
again,
is documentation that can be your friend or maybe not.
True, true. I hear you. One more that we've got, and Tanya Foster's on the line. Thank you, Tanya, for being with us. Clarification of her question, and this is a really good question. Does this allow time to bring employees back to the workforce? It's my understanding that you're not going to be penalized for perhaps furloughing or sending somebody home at this point. That you can bring people back to the workforce through this program. Is that y'all's understanding as well?
It does specifically say, Brett, that they are either kept on the payroll or rehired. So if somebody was previously let go, and then you can use this money to rehire them and pay them for the next 8 weeks.
That is correct. And that is really the intent, is to, again, either keep people on the payroll or get them back on the payroll. And that is one of the things they're looking for in what they're finalizing around forgiving the debt. Again, is that some level of that has been met. And again, that's what we're saying. We've seen some drafts of that, but that is one of the areas that has, moved around a little bit, but there will be an expectation of folks either being kept on or rehired in exchange for you receiving the forgiveness.
Excellent, excellent. Well, gentlemen, I have 3:48. This has been our longest call to date. I knew it would be. I knew there would be a lot of questions, an awful lot of interest in this. I appreciate y'all's willingness to be on with us and offer answers to questions, to things that you may not know completely about at this point. Obviously, you're getting news, as Adam said, as we're on the phone call, he's getting emails. And so the good news is that you're getting that information, and that hopefully by the time tomorrow arrives, we have a really good, solid set of rules and regulations in place so we can move forward and get this money out as quickly as possible. Again, thank you for that. And I will tease a little bit that tomorrow's call as well is going to talk more about this particular topic, more about the federal COVID assistance. There's a whole nother program, EIDL loan program that's available out there. It'll be more of a kind of a wide-ranging response call. Brent's Manning with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, he's the Southeastern Region Manager, will be with us. They were right there in the trenches as this legislation was being passed. And so we'll have him on, and hopefully we'll have a number of answers to the questions that we couldn't really answer with 100% certainty today. So again, and Derek and Adam, thank you for joining us, and hopefully you will push some things our way as you get more answers that we can share with everybody on this call, either via email or by social media.
As soon as this stuff comes out, Brett, I'll forward it straight to you, and then I'll let you send it out to all of the chamber members.
Correct. And
that would be,
yeah, Brent,
that would be great.
Something similar. And I'd love to just remind all the small business owners on that this is just one lever. Again, there are many things that in your control that you can do to continue to manage through this environment. But if for whatever reason you're not able to access this lever, there are many other things that you can do to support your company and your employees during this period.
Great. That's a tremendous message, Derek. Thank you all again, both for your participation and for your willingness to sit down and answer questions. And I know we'll be calling on you again in the future as we continue to navigate these uncharted waters. So thank you again. Getting a lot of thank yous on group chat as well from everybody who participated. Thanks for hanging in there with us a little bit longer today, but hopefully we were able to get some good information out to everybody. And we'll be back tomorrow at 3 o'clock again with a representative of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce to maybe answer some more questions. Until then, we'll sign off and say, everybody, please stay safe and healthy, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all.